All right, what's up my brother? So in this video I'm going to be reviewing the Tesla Model S Plaid that I've just had for a week. Elon Musk gave it to me. I'm going to tell you the story right now before I get into the good, bad, and the ugly sort of stuff. I was just on Twitter, or X as it's called now. I really like what Elon's been about and the sort of direction that he's heading with all of his companies and his positions. And I publicly stated I'm really not a big fan of electric cars. In fact, I really don't like them, but I like Elon Musk so much that I would consider buying a Tesla. So within the same day, I got a message from a gal named Ashley down in Nevada, and she said, hey, can we send you one of our cars? See how you like it for a week. You can try it out and, take it from there. So she was great. She coordinated with a fellow named Javier in Vaughan, who was great, delivered the car directly to my house, handed me the key and basically said, all right, off you go. The car is a fleet car. You can supercharge it anywhere for free. Drive it and see what you think. You went through a few of the things in the menu. Of course, it's the Plaid model, so he emphasized you should take it on a drag strip or, rip it 0 to 60. It's one of the fastest cars in the world. Of course, that's one of the things that interested me in a Plaid S. So let me get into the good, the bad, and the ugly sort of thing with this video. So I've kept copious notes as I've been driving this thing for the last week straight. I haven't driven any of my other cars. I've just been driving an electric car. And again, before I get into this, guys, I want to say this. I am not an electric car fan. I really don't love a lot about them. I've always loved, the whole internal combustion engine sort of narrative and, the suck, squish, bang, blow sort of sequence of events that happens with a high performance gasoline car. I just said electric car for some reason there. So here's what I liked about this car, and I'll get into the don't like in a second. So the one pedal driving is very, very good. It really grew on me. And if you don't know what that means, if you're new to electric cars, I know some of you guys are going to be Tesla watchers right now, and many of you are not because you're my regular audience, but you can drive up in a direction, let your foot off the accelerator, and then some sort of a device, a energy recovery device deploys, and it creates drag on the car. The first time I used it when I had a passenger in my car, I basically let off the throttle or the accelerator. So it's very good. It is somewhat aggressive because, again, my passenger is like, oh, brakes work good. Well, I didn't even touch the brakes at that time. But if you pilot the car and you sort of plan it right, one of the things that I really liked about the one pedal driving is I can come in a little hotter on a corner, let off the accelerator, the regenerative braking starts to slow down the car. And if you time it right, I don't know why it feels good behind the wheel, but as you're coming around into the bend and then it's kind of like scrubbing off some of the speed, you don't have to tap the brake or anything. You just have to let the regenerative braking do its thing, and then you can kind of like power your way out of it. It's a nice feeling. I did enjoy it. I wasn't expecting it, but the one pedal driving, when you get good at sort of timing it with the corners and all that, or stoplights, it's kind of a bit of a game. Visually, the car is absolutely stunning. Tesla, in my opinion, doesn't make very good looking cars. The vast majority of their lineup, again, in my opinion, sucks. It's ugly. The current Model Y is ugly. The new Model 3 is relatively good looking. The Cybertruck, in my opinion, looks like they gave a 4-year-old a ruler and said, go design a car, and somebody at Tesla goes, that's what we'll make that. So I'm not a big fan of the optics of most of their lineup, with the exception of the Plaid S. This car is visually stunning. It is a beautiful car. It's a $135,000 car roughly here in the Canadian market, and for the money, I think it's probably one of the best looking cars you can get. If I were designing it, I'd probably put a nicer diffuser on the back and a few other trim pieces. My editor has put up a little bit of a B-roll for you so you can get a visual of what the car looks like. The color is stunning. The red is absolutely beautiful. I like the black panel on the roof. It looks black from the outside. It's obviously clear glass on the inside. Visually, exterior, car is stunning. Even on the interior, I like it. I like this carbon trim. All the materials feel reasonably good quality. It doesn't feel cheap and plasticky in here. The last time I drove a Tesla was 10 years ago. It was a Model S. I did not like the interior. This is a nice quality interior. Does it compete with German rivals at this price point? I'm gonna probably go with no, but it's a very, very nice place to be, especially for an American car. Most American cars suck. I think the nicest you're gonna get from an American car company might be Cadillac or Lincoln, and I'll be very honest with you, the quality of the interior things that you touch don't feel good, and those are supposed to be premium brands. Next, the seats are really, really good. I'm just going to turn the camera around a little bit so you can kind of see it on the interior, but as you can see, the seats are actually fantastic. Visually, they're beautiful looking, and when you put your butt in them, they're fantastic seats. So A+ on the seats. They're very comfortable. The bolstering, the fit. The only thing I wish it had was more of a thigh support. With the German competitors, you can push a button and there's a thigh support that comes out, but even without a thigh support, they're still very, very, very comfortable seats. The adjustments are all over the place. There's a nice lumbar. It's a very nice seat. The next positive I put on here is short drives are great. You have no worries about, oh, did the engine oil heat up? You know, did I wait for the turbo to sort of like cool down before you just don't care. It's electric. You know, you put your foot on the brake, you slide up on this toggle thing on the screen, and the car just proceeds to move forward, almost like it's magic. I did appreciate that, and I could see the virtue or the need for something like this on shorter drives. I don't think we're that far away from at some point where you can just grab your phone, hit a few buttons, and then you can send the car or summon the car to go pick up your kids from school, and you probably feel comfortable with the car doing that as an automated driving type of machine. We're probably a few years off. We're not quite there yet, and I'll get to that in a little bit with the FSD. Drag strip mode, so that's insane. There's a panel here. When you go through the menu, pedals, steering, and mode. So on acceleration, there's chill, sport, and plaid, and there's a drag strip mode. When you can use drag strip mode, and I'll get to that in a second, and maybe the downside of things, it's insane. It is mentally insane. I'm sure you've seen the videos. I didn't record a video, but I did run it in plaid mode from launch a few times. I did get it in drag strip mode once, and I did a full launch with 4 passengers in the car. It's like being shot out of a cannon. Unfortunately, they put a 137 kilometer an hour limit on this car, which you hit in less than probably 2.2 seconds. It's supposed to be 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds, so I'd imagine at just around the 2-second mark, I'm probably doing 137 kilometers an hour, and it doesn't stop accelerating at 137 kilometers an hour. The way that it works is it basically sort of cut the throttle by the time you're doing about 120. So you don't get the full pull into oblivion, but what I've been told is this is a car that just pulls and pulls and pulls for days. It doesn't let off. And if it does that, as people have said, this car is batshit crazy. There's really nothing under 135. There's really nothing under $1 million that can accelerate this hard, I don't think, in my opinion. There's lots of exotic cars out there that are very, very fast. Some of them are hybrid. The new Lambo V12 with a hybrid system. You know, the McLarens are always very good. The Porsche Turbo S's are very good off the line. I've got an 800 horsepower tuned Porsche Turbo S. I would bet if I had this on a prep surface with drag summer tires, because it's on snows right now, this is probably faster than my Turbo S 0 to 60, even though my car is tuned and has a little bit of work done to it. I don't think it would blow the doors off the Turbo S, but I think it would definitely give it a good strong run and probably at least a car length between the two cars by the time you hit the end of a quarter mile. It's that fast. It's a very, very quick car. The drag mode is insane. The other interesting thing that I noted too is that it doesn't really drain the battery as much as I thought it would. I figured preparing the battery for drag strip mode and then launching it and all that sort of stuff, you'd see like a 5% reduction in, you know, battery, but you don't. It doesn't really move the needle that much, so I found that interesting. Running it back to back to back to back, that might be a different story, but using it just the one time, didn't really see like a noticeable, oh, you know, we just lost 3% in the charge by, you know, running that 0 to 60 run sort of thing. The other benefit I jotted down here is very, very quiet in the morning, so your neighbors will be happy. I didn't really realize how loud my cars are because they all have exhaust or tunes or exhaust and a tune, so they all make pretty, you know, loud noise when you do a cold start in the morning, so I'm sure my neighbors enjoyed me driving this for the past week. I guess it's nice being able to, like, you know, zip out of the neighborhood early in the morning and not piss off your neighbors. Another strong benefit too is I think the brakes in this car would probably last the life of the car. I can't see why they wouldn't. You don't really use the brakes that much, you know, if I'm being honest. I probably use the brakes maybe 10% of the time when it comes to stopping. And even then it's rare, and it's, you know, you're coming up to a light or something like that and you need to scrub off a little more speed, like you didn't time the one pedal braking right, so you tap the brake a little bit. But I would imagine because of the regenerative braking system and the one pedal braking system, you wouldn't need to use the brakes much. I wouldn't be surprised if these brakes last 150, 200,000 kilometers if you drive the car right. Another interesting thing that I jotted down, it's a silly small thing, but you get a courtesy beep when your light goes green. And if you're like me, where you're at a red light and you're like, okay, you're checking out that car over there, you know, maybe you have a look at your phone screen for a second, you know, you're stopped. When the light goes green, you get this like little courtesy beep, and it's like, hey, by the way, light's green, you can drive now. It's just a nice thing, so you never have to like sit there and somebody blasts a horn because you've been distracted for a second doing something else in your car, fiddling around, get something out of a door box or something like that. It's just a nice feature I've never seen in any other car. Also love that the windows close when you lock the car. so that's a nice built-in feature. Passing is so easy because you get 100% of the torque available from 0 RPM. In any circumstance, if you see a little hole, anything at all, it's very, very easy just to give the throttle a squirt and you're straight in it. I drove the car up to Collingwood, up to Blue Mountain for a little ski trip. We had the car loaded and everything like that, and I was going around this roundabout, and the roundabout basically had 2 lanes leading up to the roundabout, through the roundabout, and then coming out of it, and then it went back to 1 lane, so there's a merging lane. And I managed to get by, like, I don't know, like 5 or 6 cars, just giving it a little squirt through the roundabout and merging back in. Something I probably couldn't have done with any of my other cars, maybe with the exception of the Turbo S. But it's just effortless. Like, you don't feel like there's anything holding you back, if I can put it that way. All right, let's get on to the bad, because my bad list is unfortunately longer than the good list. The headliner here, so this headline to enter into the car, I'm gonna push the door over here to open it, sort of thing like this, just let a little air in, but the headline over here to get in and out of the car is annoyingly low. And I don't know if it's low or if it's the seat that's high. I suspect because I'm sitting on batteries, because in these cars, the entire battery pack is underneath the floorboard, the seats, the back seats and all that. Basically, the entire bottom of the car is battery. And because batteries, I don't know how big they are, let's just assume that they're yay big. Now the seat is that much higher than what it would be in a normal car. So they don't raise the roof line of the car. They leave the roof line where it would look good. It gives the aesthetics of a good looking car on the exterior. But to get in and out, like, I'm not super tall. I mean, I'm 6'2", but you can see over here, you know, with the camera, I mean, I've got headroom here between my head and the glass, but between here and here, like, I'm doing this to get in and out of the car. I just don't like it. Now, my daily driver is an Audi SUV. That's obviously easier to get in and out of. If you're gonna have that much space or have to raise the seat up that much more, then give me a higher sort of like line with the car, but I suspect they didn't do that in the Model S because that would change the aesthetics, the looks of the car. They would have to raise a roof line and it might look a little bit goofy. It might look more like the Model 3. The next thing I put on the bad list, superchargers. They're not close to where I live. I don't live downtown Toronto. I wouldn't say I even live uptown Toronto. I live kind of in the suburbs, and there's no superchargers that are convenient for me, you know, if I can put it that way. I don't have a 40-volt charger in my garage because I don't own an electric car. They didn't give me one for the 120-volt, so that was absent. But they did say, look, you know, charge it wherever you want. It's a fleet car. It's absolutely free. So to give this thing a full charge was somewhat inconvenient, you know, if I can put it that way. I thought the supercharger network was more elaborate than what it is. Does it work? Yes. Does it need to be more elaborate? Also yes. I also mentioned here on slippery days that it pushes a little bit around corners on slipperier conditions, so snow, sleet, ice, and stuff like that. Today's actually a nice day. It's 8 degrees out. Most of the snow is melting. When they gave me the car last week, it was quite cold and the weather wasn't even that good. It was pretty bad for a few days, so I had this in some pretty inclement, bad weather, if I can put it that way. And I noticed that when you go around corners, because of the weight of the car, this is on snows, brand new snows, the car is literally almost new. They gave it to me with 150 kilometers on it. I think I've put about 400 kilometers on it. And I noticed going around the bends, I mean, it's a heavy car, but going around the bends, it sort of pushes its weight, if I can put it that way. I've got all seasons on my Audi SUV, and I would say the grip level is comparable on the Audi going around bends to something like this. This is a bigger car with better tires for the winter conditions, but because of the weight of the car, you can feel it sort of push into the corners. Not something terrible. I think that you could get used to it or just adjust your driving according to the weight of the vehicle. That being said, it's a heavy vehicle and I don't like heavy vehicles. You know, this thing weighs quite a lot. It's almost a 5,000 pound car. It's about 4,800 pounds. It's a heavy car. My Spider RS is about 3,000 pounds. You notice the weight. I mean, I do notice the weight quite a bit. All of my cars are definitely lighter than this. Even my Turbo S is lighter than this. Another negative I jotted down over here. So I put down the button for the glove box is gone. I don't get that. Like, you have a glove box over here. There's literally no button. To get to the glove box, I have to go hit one button over here, and then it's probably, and then I have to guess, you know, probably, let's see, your locks. No, is it under locks? Again, you own the car. I'm sure you know where it is, but pedals and steering, is it under that? No. Oh, controls. It's got to be under controls. Okay, so for me to get to it, I would have to go one button, controls, 2 buttons, and glove box, 3 buttons. Why do I have to press 3 buttons on a screen to get in my glove box when I can just tap a button on a glove box on any other car? I don't understand the over engineering of some shit in Teslas, it just doesn't make sense to me. I'm going to get to a few other things in a little bit. To have to go through 3 menu items to open up the glove box, and I'm sure somebody in the comments going to be like, but Rich, I own a Tesla. You can do a shortcut and put it on the bottom of the fucking screen. Great, maybe you can, but even then you're limited to the amount of shortcut buttons that you can get to. If anybody else gets in a car that's never been in a Tesla, they're going to be like, how do I open a glove box? And then you have to explain to them, oh, you have to go through all this stupid stuff in the menu and look like a goof, you know, to open up a glove box. It just shouldn't be that complicated. There's certain things that you don't need to re-engineer, and I think things like the glove box, the turn signal, which has been removed from this car. You have 2 buttons over here. The yoke steering wheel, I'll mention that as well, is also stupid. It's great when you're driving straight on the highway and you've got no obstructions because the top of the wheel is obviously missing and there's no obstructions to the screen. But any other time, when you have to turn the wheel, it's annoying as fuck. I can't even emphasize how bad of a design it is to cut off the top of the steering wheel. I'm surprised that they've made so many of these cars for so many years with a yoke steering wheel. Again, I've never in my life thought to myself driving a car, gee, I wish somebody would come along and cut off the top of the steering wheel and make it look like this so we can call it a yoke for some reason. I'm not in a fighter jet. It's obviously a car. Cutting off the top of it was dumb. Anything that goes around in circles should be a circle. Like to do the hand over, it sucks. It sucks. If you drive it, you'll understand. Again, the turn signals I mentioned, from what I understand, they've been, the turn signal stock has been returned in the newer cars, in the new Model 3 and the new Model Y. They haven't done a full redesign in this yet, so there are 2 buttons over here which are awful. Putting turn signals into the steering wheel to try to minimize the look of stocks and things here is the worst thing that car companies have ever done. I know Ferrari does it with their cars. I don't know if they still do it, but it sounds like Tesla's moving back to the turn signal, and that's a good thing. But yeah, the yoke, the turn signal, certain things like that, you know, the glove box button, stupid. The infotainment system isn't exactly intuitive. Things aren't exactly where you'd think they would always be, but you do get used to it soon enough. It's not the greatest system, but it's not awful either. Okay, so full self-driving. So I jotted down over here, doesn't read speed limit signs. So coming here, I noticed, because I was running it in FSD, I noticed that there was a brand new sign. It's got the big new yellow thing over it, and it says 70 kilometers an hour. So they've reduced the speed limit from 80 kilometers down to 70. I was like, okay, that's interesting. So I waited to see if the car adjusted its speed to the new speed limit sign that was put up, and it didn't. And I realized, well, it's got all these cameras around the car. Why aren't the cameras reading the speed limit signs and making an adjustment on full self-driving to the actual speed limit? Because if you're not paying attention to that, you could end up with a ticket. So small thing, but just, you know, didn't do it. It did later on down the road when the speed limit was, I guess, assumed, or maybe the navigation. I'm assuming the way that it works is Tesla sort of like understands where the car is from a navigation perspective and drives at the speed limit set for that area. But if you're not set, or if it's not reading the signs, it's not going to make manual adjustments to certain areas, which you'll have to, of course, override and supervise. There's no soft closed doors. It's a $135,000 car. So you can't just tap it. That door isn't technically closed. So I have to, you know, you basically have to slam it. And again, for a car at this price point, I would say this thing probably competes with a BMW 5 Series, A7, S7 sort of thing, RS7. Like all of those cars have soft closed doors. So I was actually surprised when I discovered that I had to slam it. Not a huge thing, but just like it's lacking that small premium touch. Full self-driving does need improvement. So to be clear, for those of you that haven't been in one of these before, they don't drive you completely free of any supervision. You have to, there's a camera up here, you have to continuously have your head forward. I can't put this in full self-driving and just be like, you know, fucking around over here and doing stuff, or I can't be writing stuff down over here, trust me, because then it alerts you and it's like, you know, look where you're going. But you don't really need to supervise the car in most conditions. I'll tell you where it needs supervision: when there's bus lanes, and that's really about it. It's actually really good. You don't need much supervision of the system. It's not able to distinguish between bus lanes. In some left-hand turn lanes, you know, type of scenarios, I got in a situation where there was 2 left-hand turn lanes and the navigation wanted to go straight and make a left at the next light, but the full self-driving put me in the left-hand turn lane for the immediate light that I was stopped at. So it wasn't able to recognize or distinguish the differences, but the vast majority of the time, it's actually quite good, but it does need improvement. It's not at the point where it's full self-driving. So For those of you that have been like, oh, I heard you can just like, you know, have sex while you're driving the car or something like that. No, you can't. Like you have to be monitoring the road. If you're looking away, the camera alerts. And what I discovered is if you look away enough, and it thinks that you're being a bad boy, it just completely disables full self-driving. Like, I had it on the highway and, you know, I wasn't looking straight ahead enough for its satisfaction, which in my opinion was plenty. It eventually disabled it and it wouldn't turn back on. So until I parked the car and turned it off and it kind of went into sleep mode and then used it again, then I could use it. But for the remainder of that journey, I was a bad boy and I was not allowed to use full self-driving. Next thing I jotted down, there's an unpleasant vibration and sound while driving. It's minor. I thought that these cars were silent, but they're not. There's a unusual vibration in the steering. Now, I don't know if it's because they put on snow tires, they didn't balance them right, but everything in the car is brand new, unless somebody had done it before. But there is a somewhat unpleasant vibration and sound that comes from the car as you drive it. I wouldn't be able to show it to you driving it because it's not loud. It's just there. And I'm going to say on a scale of 1 to 10, on the annoying scale, it's not high, it's low. That's it. But it's worth mentioning. The cruise control button doesn't work. There's a button over here on the steering wheel between the camera and the washer, and somebody will tell me whether or not a cruise control in the comments right now. It looks like a cruise control button. It's the same looking button that I have in any of my other cars that indicates the cruise control sort of indicator. So I'm assuming it's a cruise control button, but it does nothing. It activates, it does nothing. I don't know why it's on the steering wheel. It just doesn't work. I also mentioned again, needs wipers, cruise, everything. I'd rather have a turn signal. I'd rather have a wiper stock over here and some kind of a lower stock here or here that allows me to adjust, you know, the cruise control, the speed and all that sort of stuff, the following distance between me and the next car. I don't want to go through 3 different menu things to find shit like that. It should be a quick do for the signals. Oh, the wipers, I want to make an adjustment. I want to squirt the back window, all of that sort of stuff. It's like, it just should be on stocks. Again, I understand that their design language on the interior is let's keep it clean, let's keep it tidy, but I think certain things you just shouldn't mess with. And stocks, round steering wheels, certain things, just don't mess with shit that actually works. You lose about 1% charge overnight, which I found interesting. So it's 71% right now. So if I were to park this in my driveway overnight and the weather was cold and I got in the car the next morning, I'd lose about 1%. Something that doesn't happen with petrol powered cars. You don't get in your car and all of a sudden it's like, oh, 1% of your gas tank volume evaporated overnight for no reason. I'm told that, you know, for battery conditioning and blah, 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 and computer use, the battery just sort of deteriorates slowly on its own, which I would imagine, I mean, if you went away on vacation or a week and you parked it at a park and fly for 7 to 10 days, if you didn't leave the battery reasonably, you'd probably get back into a dead battery in the car, I would imagine. So it's just worth noting that it does lose some of its charge as the car sits. After that, I put solar panels would be nice. I don't know why Elon doesn't put, I don't care about this over here. It doesn't really serve any purpose. It lets in, like, it's hot to the touch right now, even though it's only 9 degrees out right now and it's sunny, but over here is radiating heat for no reason. Solar panels up here would be useful, maybe even on the hood and trunk, maybe like a blacked out version. Hey Elon, make a blacked out version of this car with solar panels on all the vertical surfaces, so roof, hood, trunk, and I bet that that has enough that you wouldn't lose any charge leaving the car parked outside. In fact, you might even get a little bit of range. From what I understand, with the new Prius Prime, you leave that car outside for a couple of days, you get a few miles of range just leaving it parked in the sun. Not a lot, but it's just like, I don't want to worry about the car being parked somewhere for 10 days. It's like, oh, the battery's dead by the time I get in it. I don't know if that's a real problem for most people. Maybe they have plug-in chargers at park and flies and stuff like that. It's just worth mentioning. Oh, the sun visor. What an utterly useless design. Again, I'm not a giant, so I'm going to sit upright in this thing. I'm going to turn this a little bit this way so you can sort of see it, but it's useless. It's utterly useless. It's either have glare or be blind and not see shit in front of you. I'm currently parked and I'm looking directly ahead. I can barely see the headlights of the Toyota Corolla in front of me. I can't see inside the cabin. I definitely wouldn't be able to make eye contact with the driver. It's just not a very good design. This should either have been moved up, recessed higher, or redesign. Whoever gave this a passing grade should be fired at Tesla. This is not even safe. You know, you just can't use it. Utterly pointless. The fans in the car are also way too loud. So if you're running on auto, you're gonna have this running usually on level 2 or 3. And I don't know if you guys can hear that, but that's loud. It's louder than it should, in my opinion. They're also exceptionally loud. Like if I go to the HVAC over here and I turn on window defrost, listen to this. I don't even know if you'll be able to hear me talking. I'm not gonna say it's deafening, but it's ridiculously loud. It's really, really loud. I don't know why they designed the fans to be so brutally loud when they're running, but they just are. On the plus side, I forgot to mention this on the good side, but there's a huge panel across the entire front of the dashboard. And if you leave the car parked outside overnight and there's snow and ice on it, one of the great features of this car, and I didn't have the app connected because they give me this key card instead, but one of the great features is you could basically pre-warm the car. You get some buttons, all the snow and ice would melt off the windshield and the rear defrost. You could preheat the cabin, warm up the seats, warm up the steering wheel, and get into a nice warm car. So that's a nice feature of the HVAC system and it being an electric car. But the fans, holy smokes, like figure out a way to make those things quieter. They're still like overpowering parts of my conversation. I'm gonna turn it down a little bit. There's no ski pass-through down the center. It's a 60-40 split. There's no 60-40 or center ski pass. So when I took it skiing, I found that I had to drop one of the seats and just sort of run the skis down that side. Not a huge deal, but all of my other cars that I've owned for the last number of years, whether it was Audis, BMWs, it didn't matter. They always have a ski pass-through bag. Super appreciative feature on cars, because that way if you're traveling with 4 people in the car, you can still put all the skis down the middle and there's no trouble. Whereas if you're dropping 40% of the seat, you can't get 4 people in here comfortably. Panel gaps, not very good. It's poor quality and finish. I noticed when I was driving and I had a look in the rearview mirror here on the side of the car, you can really see it with the door handles, because the door handles go in and out and they're recessed. I have my editor put up a quick clip of that, but you can see quite clearly that a lot of the panels don't fit that well. I've heard of this before about Tesla. I was hoping they would have fixed that by now, especially at a 100,000 price point on a car, but it seems like there's a little bit of work to go still. It's not good. I mean, my McLaren 720 had very similar panel type gap issues like that, with a handle, but that was a hand-built car in England, probably by some guy that was drunk at a pub the night before and came into work, stumbled into work, screw this in sort of thing, and just didn't line it up properly. You kind of expect that, but I think robots assemble most of these cars now. So for me to see panel gap that large in certain areas, it's just, again, it's not appreciated. Like I kind of expect a little bit more. I wish the full self-driving avoided potholes. It's got cameras all over the car. I wish when it's driving by itself, it saw a pothole and it's like, oh, let's just go around that. It's not a problem. It's not going to inconvenience anybody else on the road, but it'll make the ride more comfortable. I also didn't like that the full self-driving would drive in people's blind spots. So you can't really see it over here, but I'm currently parked and there's another car parked ahead of me, not beside me, but ahead of me in the next line. And essentially the car will spend a lot of time in full self-driving, driving in people's blind spots, which I don't like. I was a motorcyclist as a young man, and one of the things that I was always very careful about, and even today as I drive cars, is I try to avoid staying out of people's blind spots. And even with monitoring, like blind spot monitoring detection systems and stuff like that, they're generally pretty good. Not every car has it, and not every driver will pay attention to them because people are stupid. So just for the safety of yourself and your passengers especially, I think it would be appreciative if the car, or even had the option, like you could toggle over, don't hang out in people's blind spots on FSD on the highway sort of thing. That would be cool. That would be a nice update. So hopefully Tesla engineers, you're watching this, you're like, let me just jot this shit down and fix it. So that's it really for the bad list. I forgot to jot down there that the suspension doesn't really work the way that I hoped it would. I'm going to start driving now and take you guys on with me for the rest of the ride. But the suspension on this car, it's an air suspension and it'll raise up and down. See, look, you can see the steering wheel is really annoying. It just kind of disappears out your hand because the top's not there. And I got to push a stupid button over here to turn left. But the suspension is not that comfortable. I think most car reviewers, or like real automotive journalists, that's not me, will probably say something along the lines of, it's crashy. Crashy is probably the way that I would describe it. It's a heavy car. My 5 or 6 year old Audi SUV right now rides better than this. It's got an air suspension as well, but it rides better than this over bumps. It smooths them out, it makes them a lot more comfortable, and this just doesn't. It just, like, and there's that vibration in the pedal and the steering wheel. It doesn't feel like a balancing thing. It's just an unpleasant feeling, like I don't know if it's the electric system or the electric motor, but there's that. So crashy suspension, I hope they can fix it. Maybe it's just an issue with the weight of the car. It's harder to modify, control it, but that's just the way that it works. Power's very nice. You can get up to speed very quickly. I did forget jot down in there, the sound system is quite good, but it doesn't have good bass. So I'm going to recalibrate what I just stated there. It's a good sound system, and because there's no engine and there's no exhaust note or intake sound, it's reasonably quiet when you're driving. There's no bass. This level at this price point, and people debate me on this, oh, the sound system's phenomenal and they use these engineers and blah, 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 and it's like, cool, but it's missing the bang in the back. A buddy of mine picked me up from the airport about a month ago, and he's got a Burmeister system in his Porsche Cayenne, and that car is, I think, 7 years old. It's a 2016, 17, he's gonna have to correct me. But the sound system in the Porsche Cayenne, the Burmeister, is phenomenal. Great bass, nice little bit of a bang in your back. You don't get that in this car. You don't get that nice sounding lows. It's kind of like a whoa. I'm a bit of an audiophile. I used to work in a stereo store when I was a teenager, so I spent a lot of time around guys that were like very technical with this stuff. I'm not saying it's a bad sound. It's good. It's just, it should be better because there's no engine running. There's no, like, aside from maybe some tire noise and wind noise to sort of drown things out a little bit, it's generally a very quiet running. But why doesn't that give me a better sounding sound system, if you know what I'm saying? Anyway, that's the good and the bad with this Tesla Plaid S. I guess, you know, long story short, for those of you that were wondering, hey, you know, are you going to buy one now? I'm going to go with no, not right now. That's the caveat. I think it's a great car. I think it's great for short journeys and travels. I don't know the price point is something that I would like. For $135,000, there's a lot of other cars that I'm going to be compelled to look at. You know, one of the big benefits in an electric car, or Teslas, you know, specifically the range. You get pretty good range out of them, and the cost to charge them, it's about a third the price of fueling a car, if I can put it that way. So they get the equivalent of 100, 105 miles to the gallon of a gas-powered car. So you know, you figure out the math. I don't know what you're driving. Maybe you're driving a Prius, maybe you're driving a 20 mile to the gallon, you know, regular sort of car. But for most drivers, they'll probably see at least double, maybe 3 times an improvement in cost to travel somewhere. So it's good from that sense. It's an appliance, you know, if I can put it that way. It's, you know, it's an appliance. It doesn't create a sense of emotion, doesn't excite you. Even when you put your foot down, you know, it does that shit. Like, the car rips. It just goes, and it impresses people when you do that, but that's its party trick. That's it, really. Nobody's impressed by the full self-driving. Nobody's impressed by the sound system. Nobody's impressed by the cabin. I've had a lot of people in and out of this car, and I asked a lot of them what their opinions were, and it was all pretty much, you know, the same. It's a nice car. Didn't really like that it's missing buttons. You know, a lot of people thought the interior could have been a little bit nicer. One person complained that because, like, you know, for example, you have to push a button over here to open up the door. If that fails, how do you get out of the car? It has a backup system. There's a little lever over here that you latch, sort of thing, and it mechanically opens the door. So it's not like you won't be able to get out of the car. But things like that concern people. I think overall it's a fantastic car. Would I get one right now? No. I'm just not there yet, and I'm more of an SUV guy, and I don't like the Model X. I think it's ugly. The new Model Y is interesting to me. I think it looks reasonably good. I'd like to drive one, actually. Hopefully, you know, I can get Tesla to give me one of those for a week. Maybe that'll be a future review, but that's what I think of a Plaid S. You guys let me know what you think in the comments below. There's a little bong saying, hey, the light's green, so you can drive now. I think it makes a great car for recording videos in because it's very quiet. So from the perspective of what I do on my channel, it's probably very, very good for recording videos. So we'll see what the audio quality is on this one when we play it back. And the last thing, which I forgot to mention when I was recording earlier, this is an afterthought insert. A friend of mine loaned me his EMF detector, magnetic fields, like all of these radio frequency fields and sort of thing it picks up on. So you can put it between your cell phone and your Bluetooth, and it'll show you, you know, the amount of EMF that's emitted between those two devices, things like that. I used it in this car. I used it in my friend's Porsche Taycan electric car. I used it in my friend's Tesla Model 3, which is a 4-year-old design, and I used it in my Audi SUV, and I used an S. This thing, for some reason, I don't know if it's because battery pack or because it's a Plaid setup with massive motors, throws off a large amount of EMF. More than what I would want to live with, if I can put it that way. Much, much higher levels than what you get off Bluetooth, much, much higher levels than what I got off any of the other cars. The Porsche is much better insulated from EMF. I don't know if they use a special kind of Faraday cage or what they do, but for some reason in this Plaid, and my editor will put up a little visual there of the meter going bonkers. I think it went up into the 200s, which is extremely high. It was beeping away like crazy, and it didn't really have any rhyme or reason to it. It just is a very, I guess you can call call it a dirty EMF type of car. But again, that probably has something to do with the pack and the power setup, because it's so fast. Oops, I wasn't ready for that even myself. To deploy that much electricity, and it just gives off that much EMF all the time. It's not coming off just when you go like this, but it just keeps coming off all the time. Just heads up, something you might want to consider. For me, it was like, you know, I think the biggest thing that I really didn't like was just getting in and out of the car. This being in the way with the higher seat height and the low roof line and the absolutely useless visor and a few other things kind of make it like a deal breaker for me. Like, I don't want to be going through menus to push buttons and stuff like that. Phenomenally fast car, but there you have it. You guys let me know in the comments below. Hope you guys have an awesome day. Peace out.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.